Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. The Atheist Experience is live June the 8th, 2003. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrien, my co-host, as always. And today, our guest on the program is Don Baker. Very happy to have you. First time on the show for you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, no, absolutely. Don is a PhD in computer science. He is a former adjunct professor from the University of Texas in computer science. And his hobbies include, as most of ours, criticism of Christianity. But he is also into a subject called memetics. And that is what he'll be talking about on the program today. Talking about memetics, what a meme is, and how it is that Christianity can be thought of as a meme, and how that might help us to understand what Christianity is.
That's right.
So, thank you for coming on the show. Now, this was the subject of your lecture during our lecture series last Sunday.
That's right.
And you're sort of going to give the basic version because I think a lot of the points you made were really, really interesting. And a different perspective on looking at how religion takes hold in the culture.
Right.
So, so that's great. So, very much looking forward to hearing you today.
Thank you.
Just general opening announcements, as always, among ACA's many activities, which makes us such a fun group to be part of. We have Godless Gamers, which is a Monday night thing at Russell and Virginia Glasser's house at 7 p.m. And ACA Happy Hour takes place Thursday evening, starting at about 7:30 p.m. and running all through the night, or at least until they close, at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is near the intersection of I-35 and Highway 183, Research Boulevard. So if you go there and you don't see folks right off the bat, don't worry, stick around. Look for a table with a little ACA sign on it, actually. And that's kind of the identifying mark now. Okay. Other ACA media. Whoa, there I am. Boy. The Nonprofits, our internet radio show, which is bi-weekly now and hosted by Jeff D. and Vic Farrow, is back in business, and they're at the atheistnetwork.com website, 2 o'clock p.m. on Saturday afternoons, and that's every other week. And, of course, past episodes of the program can be streamed as MP3 files on our website on the radio show page. Yesterday they had their third episode of, I guess, their new season.
Yes.
Best one they've done so far. They're back in the groove, I think. For its very rocky start they got off to, first it was like they weren't going out live when they thought they were, and then it was they were clearly out of practice. Yesterday it was like the old Nonprofits were back, and it was a hell of a show. Very entertaining.
Good, excellent.
Really good. And that's already up on the website if you missed it yesterday. But that's atheistnetwork.com every other Tuesday afternoon. So the next episode will be 2 Saturdays from yesterday.
The 21st.
There we are. Thank you. And MP3 downloads. So enjoy. And also finally, the University Atheists and Agnostics, a registered UT student organization started up by our very own Charles Tabany. They're taking the summer off, like all good college students should, but they will be back in full swing in the fall, starting up their third semester. Had 2 very successful first semesters, and so if you want to know more about them, and if you're a UT student and faculty member, there's the email address right there, uaa@mail.utexas.edu, if you want to talk to Charles and say, hi, I'm a UT student or faculty member interested in your group because I'm an atheist, et cetera, and he'll tell you all about it. So, so that, I think, wraps up the early announcements.
Except for our normal Sunday meeting.
Did I utterly gloss over that?
Yep.
I did, didn't I? This Sunday meeting, yeah. I know there's something I was thinking. Well, our group meets Sunday mornings, 10:30 a.m., hot jumbo bagels. See, Ashley, what would I do without this guy right here? Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels. It's because I never go. That's why.
We haven't seen you there in a year and a half.
I know. One of these days, I'll turn up and everyone will drop dead of a heart attack, so that'll be the end of the ACA. But 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, except, of course, for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series, and that's at the Mayor Room at the Austin History Center, and that's at 9th and Guadalupe. And, of course, Hot Jumbo Bagels is on 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca. Now, and, of course, as I said, Dawn was last week's speaker. And our next speaker will be, I didn't write her name down, but it's on our website on the upcoming events page. If you go to atheist-community.org, which is where you can go for all sorts of information about our fine group, there's the upcoming calendar of events page, upcoming events, which will tell you who our next, I think, 2 speakers are lined up to be. But atheist-community.org is where you can find out more stuff about us, including reading our fact page. We have a frequently asked questions page that we put up as a way of addressing many of the questions that we have gotten on this program over the course of 5 years. If this is your first time to watch the show, if you've never seen us before, We are a live call-in show. We've been doing this now for 5 years off and on, different time slots, what have you, but we're still here. And over that period of time, the most common questions that we get from Christians, what is atheism? What's the difference between the atheist and agnostic? What do atheists think about this, that, or the other thing? Very basic questions. They're on our website on a fact page, frequently asked questions. So if you're curious about us and you think, well, I'll call these guys up and give them a piece of my mind, check our website first. Check the fact page, because we may have already answered your question. And if not, call us anyway. Also, TV at atheist-community.org, the viewer email feedback address. This is for you guys out there to fire questions at us. Every Sunday, again, the calls line up and we try to get to all of them, but it seems like at the end of every show there's somebody, at least one or two people that we don't get to. Sorry about that. And of course, some people might not want to call us up at all, but if you want to email us a question, do so. There's the address right there, bottom of your screen, tv at atheist-community.org. And we'll pick the best letters and read them out on the air if we can. Last week, we got a very interesting letter. We got a letter of criticism from an atheist viewer.
Yes.
Which was interesting. Interesting, good letter. And, we welcome all sorts of criticism, so that was kind of an interesting one to get. And to talk back and forth there a little bit. And I didn't bring it to read out, because it turned into a two-letter exchange. But you can read it on the website on the viewer email page. And she brought up some. I thought at first I wasn't quite sure what her points were.
Okay.
And it seemed like she was sort of misunderstanding the intent of the show. But we had some interesting feedback, and I got to clarify. Yeah. I think exactly what it is we try to do on the show, and specifically what it is we don't try to do on this show.
Exactly.
But it just goes to show that we welcome all sorts of commentary, and from Christians and atheists alike. So either call us up or write us. It's for you. All right. So Don, again, thrilled to have you here. We're going to do news with Ashley first, and then we will get to your presentation.
Very good.
All right. And what's happening on planet Earth?
Okay. Actually, a heavy news week this time. Got quite a bit. First in Copenhagen, Denmark. A Lutheran minister down there, or up there, was suspended Tuesday for saying God doesn't exist and there is no eternal life.
Okay.
Slightly different teachings than the norm, granted.
Yeah, he's kind of thinking outside the box there, isn't he?
Yeah, he is in a relatively small town, and he said, "There is no heavenly God, there is no eternal life, there is no resurrection." The statements have mystified church leaders, no kidding, in the Scandinavian country of 5.3 million.
Yes, do we know why this man is then a priest at all?
Exactly. It is interesting to notice, though, 5.3 million people in the country. About 85% of the population belongs to the state evangelical Lutheran church, yet just 5% attend church services regularly. So of the 85%, only 5% actually bother to go to church.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because what you have, the push towards theocracy in this country, which I think is very real.
Yeah.
They're not coming out and saying it as much. Right?
Yes.
But what we actually see in a lot of European countries and in foreign countries where they have an official state religion, you see religious practice really just vanishing in those countries. It is becoming less and less. The more state and church are intermingled, the less people seem to want to have anything to do with either.
Which is a big conundrum for us atheists. Because the best thing we could do to kill off Christianity
in this country is to
promote it as the state religion.
Yeah, make it the state religion. That would be no.
So it's a tough one to balance.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, maybe there's a mimetic reason for that, but we'll get to that in a minute. So okay. So what is this? Do we have this priest's track record, his history of service to the? Who is this guy? Has he been controversial in the past? I mean,
there's not much in here about it. Many clergy have said that it's.
Did he just shoot off his mouth one day and say this with no provocation? Just
according to the article, it doesn't have any build-up.
Wow,
it's just there.
Take that.
Many clergy have said that it's not possible to be a pastor without believing in the existence of God and the resurrection of Christ.
It's pointless.
Others, however, including blah, 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 called his claims refreshing.
Wait a minute, who's blah, blah, blah? Come on, I mean, is it a Danish name that you can't
including
pronounce?
Mogens Lindhardt and the leaders of Denmark's Theology College of Education.
There we go. Okay.
All right. Yeah, called his claims refreshing.
Refreshing. Now, that's interesting. In what way? No elaboration on that?
No elaboration. That's the last line of the story.
We think it's refreshing that this that this priest has come out and expressed total atheism.
Yes, that this major minister has come up and said, there's no God or eternal life. Come on.
So what does that say about the theological college? They're like, oh, finally!
It's out. Finally, we can relax now. Jeez.
That's the thing at the theological college. They're all sitting around saying, don't tell anybody.
We've all found out.
Secret's out.
Don't say anything.
Oh, well. We can all go home. That's it. Take off these damn uncomfortable collars. Okay. Weird. Interesting. Yep. Wacky stuff going on in Denmark.
So the Danes are now saying, there's no God.
It's a fun country, I tell you.
Okay. This is actually surprising. New Hampshire. It was in New Hampshire, Episcopalians on Saturday elected an openly gay man as their next bishop. It was selection Reverend Gene Robinson, 56, who was chosen over 3 other candidates in voting by New Hampshire clergy and lay Episcopalians, is still subject to confirmation next month by the church's National General Convention, and, no kidding, is expected to be debated.
Yes, you would think.
But yeah, I mean, he is actually openly gay, and they elected him as their new bishop. So that's a very surprising thing.
That is interesting.
Now, this is Episcopalians. Bishops in the worldwide evangelical...
Well, see,
Angelican.
Evangelical?
No?
Yeah, Anglican.
Anglican.
There we go.
Yeah. Communion, which includes the Episcopalian Church in the United States, approved a resolution in 1998 calling gay sex incompatible with Scripture. So it sounds like they've got some internal struggles going on there between saying, a couple of years ago that it's not compatible, it's not going to work.
My parents are Episcopal. I'm going to have to ask them about this.
Yeah.
Be interesting. I mean,
see what their stand is.
Because they have been... They have told me in the past, having a gay priest or gay minister, just absolutely no, flat out.
Yeah.
They don't have any objection. They're not against them as people, but they're just, they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And same attitude towards women, actually. Yeah. In the priesthood.
Okay.
So.
Well, this one's actually been elected to bishop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even higher than normal, minister or something like that.
Right. So this could be very, very interesting to see. I mean, I'm sure that
see if it actually goes through.
There. But it's interesting. Well, we're sitting on the sidelines and we watch these sort of schisms and internal strife going on within denominations.
Yeah.
It's just kind of interesting to us to kind of watch that, how they oh no, but there's this dogma that says that we can't do this, that, or the other. But then the real world is presenting us with all this cognitive dissonance, and how do we
slowly got to start enveloping real life?
Yeah.
So
wow. Okay.
And the struggles that go along with that.
Yeah. Well, he won't have an easy time of it, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, so what's next?
Next one? This is one that many people have probably already heard about.
Oh, right.
This is the Muslim woman. Mm-hmm. She got her license. Actually, how the story goes is she got her license, I think it was 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was with the veil on. It was with the veil and the hood and everything like that.
She's in Florida, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Miami. She got her license about 7 years ago. A few months ago, they wrote her a letter and said, we're going to revoke it because you have to come in and take a picture with your actual face on your identification card.
Now, her trip was she wanted to wear her veil.
For religious purposes, of course.
in her license photo.
Exactly.
Now, did her original license photo? So they let her do it before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And now they've...
with the terrorist scare, they're worried about that.
Yes,
exactly.
So clearly, right.
Because, it was an old license, relatively speaking.
So now they're making it a Homeland Security issue.
Exactly. Right. Now they've brought her in and said, look, you need to have an actual picture with your face on there.
Right.
And she is arguing that based, it's her religion, of course. She can't show her face to other men outside of her family and in public. And so basically she said that, I can't do that for my religion.
Yeah,
and they're saying...
free exercise sort of question.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But the state is saying this is a security issue. We have to have people's faces on their ID card.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I do think that my security, as an American citizen, takes precedence over somebody's superstition.
Exactly.
Okay? That's not to say, or even remotely imply, that this woman is guilty of anything. Or is affiliated with any sort of anti-American group.
I wouldn't assume that she is at all. But
it would hurt to fly. Exactly.
It's the precedent you set.
Exactly.
Because now anybody can go in there with any wacky religion and say, no, you can't take a picture of my face. You can't take my fingerprints.
I have to be totally nude in my photo. Because I'm, or whatever.
And it's not the state's mandate to say what's wacky and what's not, right?
Exactly. And as was pointed out by one of our crew members, if this were something where it was some kind of national ID card where you have to have this, then that would be a slightly different story. But considering that driving and getting a license is a privilege and not a right, then if she doesn't want to get this taken, with her actual face on there, fine, you don't get a license.
That's right.
You can still walk, bus, and bike.
A driver's license is not a requirement for any U.S. citizen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since it's not a requirement, you can go through life without it. Yeah. If you want to drive, you have to go by our rules.
Yeah.
And
it'd be very tough to do a lot of things without a driver's license, like have a checking account.
It would, yes. But yeah, I'm sorry, security does kind of come first.
Sure. But to me, there is a bigger issue here. There's a meta issue here, and that is, here is this religion that is clearly horribly oppressive, right? Yeah. I mean, it makes women, if you follow it to a fundamentalist degree, and even if you don't, right? Women have to walk around veiled.
Yeah.
Okay.
You cannot show your face to anyone.
Yeah. And in the most fundamentalist interpretation of it all, they have to be like completely shrouded from head to toes in one of those damn burqa things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is terribly, horribly oppressive. And what I thought was really bizarre, right, was the way the ACLU fought for her position on the grounds, I guess, that it is a religious freedom thing.
Exactly.
When you would think, now wait a minute, here is a demonstrable case of oppression.
Yeah.
Okay, like women's rights being horribly oppressed by this belief system that makes them walk around with their faces covered.
Totally. Now, whether she offhand agrees with that or not.
Well, she must.
Obviously she does, but that's kind of beside the point, I mean, I can't understand any religion like that.
I'm just curious how the ACLU came to the decision that it came to take her side of the thing.
Yeah.
Or to even get involved at all when it seems like you say, but wait, this whole act of women having to wear veils is a horrible violation of human rights.
Yeah.
As the ACLU, we should be defending human rights instead of defending the institutions that violate them.
ACLU is all about the Constitution. It's not about human rights.
Oh, I guess that, that needs to be clarified.
Different mandate here, different.
Much of their publicity and the way they present themselves on the website is as sort of a human rights organization.
Yeah.
And constitutionally, perhaps, but I think, of course, the government made the right decision with this.
Yes.
So. Sorry, lady, but
yeah. But that's the way it goes.
You could try being an atheist and walk around, free as a bird. And,
exactly.
If you wanted to.
You don't have to wear those in 110-degree weather in Florida.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, we're not there to tell people, to deconvert or to tell everyone what they should or shouldn't believe. But, you wouldn't have to dress like that if you didn't have religion. Or that religion.
Well, she was converted from Christianity, so she's apparently very fond of religions.
So frying pan into another frying pan. Yeah.
Okay, last story.
All right.
A village in India. These are always fun. They're going to be holding a Hindu religious ceremony to drive away a ghost from a school toilet. Residents of a village near Jaipur are so scared they have stopped sending their daughters to the government middle school for girls. It is reported 3 students suffered epileptic fits after visiting the toilet.
Okay, have they checked the plumbing? Okay. How badly are these things backed up? That would be question A.
Yeah.
Okay. One
of the teachers obtained a quick transfer after being gripped by fear of a spirit that prowled near the toilet.
It's Moaning Myrtle.
Sub-Inspector of Police told United News of India nobody has seen the ghost, but the school toilet suspected to be a devil's den.
Well, most school toilets
was brought down by villagers. They apparently tore this place down.
Okay, well then who cares?
The villagers, who believe the ghost is still haunting the school, say they had determined to hold a yagya, a fire purification ceremony, to exorcise the ghost and bring the girls back to school.
Oh, great!
Now it's a fire ceremony.
Yes.
In a toilet.
Yo,
if you throw a match in there, it's going to blow up. That will get any ghosts out of it.
Depending on how bad, the methane, buildup is, right? But boy, so if this haunted toilet wasn't enough, now we have the smell of burning feces. Which, yeah, you won't be able to exorcise that for love or money.
Time.
The world is a fun and
that'll
strange.
be a worse thing than any ghost that could be inhabiting the toilet.
Well, hooray for multiculturalism. Well, there we are. All right, so
that's it
news.
for the news.
Fun. Okay. Great. Well, Don.
Yes. Hi.
Again, thank you for joining us. And the phone number to call us up, we'll put that up in about 5-10 minutes. But Don is going to talk to us today about memetics. Now, you've actually given 2 lectures to us on the subject. The first was on memetics as a general topic.
Right.
And then last Sunday's lecture, you talked about Christianity as a meme. Mm-hmm. So I thought what we'd do is first, just for the benefit of viewers at home who don't know, what is a meme? And then how does understanding what a meme is help us to understand ideas like Christianity? Let's just start with that.
Those are excellent questions. And it'll take me a little while to cover both of those, I think.
Oh, well, that's fine.
These ideas come out of evolutionary biology. This idea of, genes. We have genes are sort of the mechanism by which we have evolution occurring. Mm-hmm. Right? We have this notion of natural selection and mutation leading to diversity, and then some of these offshoots have a better chance of survival than others, and they're competing for resources and that sort of thing. And this is the notion of universal Darwinism in a sense that we have some sorts of things that are replicating, and that we have some sort of variation in the various instances of it over time, and over time we have an increase in complexity due to competition and this diversity going on. So the idea of universal Darwinism is sort of taking the ideas of evolution out of evolutionary biology and seeing what else they apply to. And so this whole idea of memetics is applying these ideas to culture. And so effectively, memes are elements of culture or elements of imitation, if you will. And we have this notion of a meme sort of living in our minds and having some sort of integrity. It's existing over time, and we can share them through teaching or through things like books and TV or movies, that sort of thing. And they have sort of a lifetime, and they compete for our attention and for our different spots in our head for space, if you will.
Right. So would it be accurate to say then that a meme is any really, really good idea that catches on? Is that a meme, or? Well,
actually, all ideas are. All ideas are. All of our culture is meme based. It's just really sort of a way of looking at what's there already.
See, because that was my next question, was that if every idea can be thought of as a meme, how does the concept of memes help us understand what ideas are any more than just thinking of them as ideas would help us understand what ideas are? Well, and good ideas versus bad ideas, ones that catch on versus ones that don't.
Right. So one of the things that helps this perspective helps you with is you get to maybe look at memes that are very, very successful, and then you can sort of reverse engineer why they're successful or what's going on with that. As Christianity is an example of a very successful meme, or actually a complex of memes that work together, you see it as very, very successful. Although, as sort of rational folks, we sort of scratch our heads and say, how is it so successful given that it doesn't explain the world, that we see? The universe was not created in 6 days. Look at all these contradictions in the Bible, and so on and so on. And so you can, from a memetic perspective, you can take a look at Christianity, and you can explain why it is the way it is, and you can explain these contradictions.
So you can explain why it has become a successful idea, even though there are parts of it that can be demonstrated to be either untrue or inaccurate.
Right.
Yeah. So why people embrace the idea in spite of those things.
Right.
Okay. And why such things as disconfirming evidence are thought by believers to be just, that's irrelevant, who cares?
Right.
I have faith, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Okay.
So, as atheists, we often, run into roadblocks as far as debating and such because, we're using reason and the meme is actually, appealing to people at levels other than reason.
Yeah.
There's emotional appeal. There's things like the survival instinct that the Christianity meme plugs into that we can't even argue against, right? Because reason's not involved, and it's basically our inbred survival instincts that are being played with here.
Yeah, that brings up the letter that I just talked about that we got last week from the young woman who is an atheist, who sent us a new letter criticizing us. One of the points that she made was, you guys are just preaching to the choir, and we as atheists, we try to use reason and logic to counter these arguments, but to Christians, they don't care about those kinds of things, and you can't make the point anyway. And the implication was, so then why even bother when you're butting your head against a wall? And I made several arguments as to why you have to bother. But, perhaps you can then just, but let me, I didn't want to put you on a digression.
These are good points. These are good
digressionary
points.
path. But when a meme hits a certain level of success in a culture, like as Christianity has done and as some of the other major religions have done, is it valid to say, gee, there's no point in even trying to challenge it anymore. Let's get on with our lives and let's just accept it even though we know bits of it to be wrong. I don't think that's what you should do. I think that I think that what matters first and foremost is what can be arrived at through logic and reason. Mm-hmm. And so, and if a bad belief happens to be popular, that doesn't make it immune from criticism. That's my point of view. But do you think, just from a pure standpoint of understanding what a meme is and how thoroughly entrenched it gets woven into the fabric of the culture, is that still just butting your head against the wall? Is it ever anything?
I think that the perspective gives you some very good tools for combating it.
So it would then even make combating it easier as opposed to harder in some ways. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
All right,
absolutely.
Okay.
Because you it's know thy enemy. If you really know how it works, then you can control it to a certain extent or leverage what's going on.
Right.
It would seem that again, going back to actual biology and living creatures and stuff like that, there may be parts of nature that you don't like. We don't like bugs, but we can't just yank them out, of the entire ecosystem and expect things to just continue on happily.
But if one crawls into your house, you can step on it.
Yes, you can do that one.
Yeah.
But if you yank all insects out of the ecosystem, it collapses.
Yeah.
If we take this, set of memes, Christianity, and just yank them out of our society, you have a lot of holes there. And it's not going to survive as well as it could. You need something to plug up the holes.
Sure.
In the system.
No, that's a good point. So then, so then the first point would be that as biological organisms, as natural selection controls the development of biological organisms by, those that have the most favorable survival characteristics will tend to go on and reproduce to the next generation more so than the ones that don't. Mm-hmm. Memetics, the study of memetics says cultures and the ideas that influence cultures work in exactly the same ways.
That's right.
There are those that have survival capacity that they are more likely to get spread than other ideas. Right. And whether or not the idea is perfectly true isn't necessarily what guarantees that survival.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Truthfulness is just for one way we value ideas and things.
Okay.
If I know how to build a bridge, for example, that's a very useful thing. I'm gonna remember that. I'm going to promote that, and that is valuable in and of itself. But even if Christianity doesn't provide a complete and accurate picture of the world, it does have value there. People do have this sense. So yes, it will continue on regardless of its factuality.
Okay. So explain some ways, specifically in which Christianity functions as a meme and how it manages to protect itself from, shield itself from critical evaluation and as anything that would sort of serve to damage its influence.
Okay. Well, if you take a look at memes and what makes them successful, you see a number of traits. You see things like integrity maintenance is a very important problem for memes because when things are in our minds, we can combine them with other things. We can tear them apart. We can, take a few notes out of a Rachmaninoff piece and turn it into a Barry Manilow piece, right? So it doesn't, so a meme holding together is one of the big problems, and a memes facilitate their own sort of integrity maintenance through things like a canonical representation. Like in the case of Christianity, we have the scripture as a digital encoding, if you will. We have things like repetition in church services, creating integrity maintenance, because and this notion that competing religions are false. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the mechanisms by which Christianity maintains its integrity. Okay. Another important thing is the meme needs to find a way to be transmitted to new hosts, potential infectees, if you will, of the meme. And we see this, successful memes do this by attacking or going after a captive audience or a very attentive audience. Maybe they're attentive because they know that what's coming is important or useful, or maybe it's a captive audience where they don't have a choice and they're exposed to it.
Mm-hmm. So transmission obviously is crucial to integrity maintenance.
Oh yeah, all of these are related. Okay. So in the case of Christianity, we see children being exposed to it. That's a very important part of Christianity is the passing on of Christianity to children.
Right.
And
this whole notion
Sunday
of
school, that
the promotion of family values in Christianity, the idea of reproduce, marry, have big families, and to make more Christians.
Right.
And to sort of raise the children in the religion. Yeah.
Right. Right, and it's getting ahead of us a little bit, but in effect, we have in that situation, we have a whole host of mechanisms effectively creating more humans for the meme to infect, and it's sort of one of those sort of scarier consequences of what this view is that it's just like in a sense the movie The Matrix. I know it's kind of popular sport these days to interpret the Matrix, but here you have something that's feeding off of humans and in effect controlling humans to a large extent in order to facilitate its own survival. It's a different entity that has a survival instinct.
Yeah, so we're talking now about an idea, a concept that when it reaches a certain, I guess you could say, critical mass, it does seem to take on a life of its own.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's no longer the people maintaining and controlling the idea; it's the idea maintaining and controlling the people.
Right. And I think that's
through culture.
That's one of the key insights here is that the meme is in charge for many people, or the meme has a subtle influence on so many people that you see its influence in large movements. Okay. Things like the abortion rights or abortion. Prohibition movement, the ban on cloning, family values, this notion that the United States is a Christian nation. These are movements that you see where you see the meme's influence on many people. So I have 2 more points as far as what makes a meme successful. One is the notion of infection, to get people to actually adopt it into their heads. Mm-hmm. With children, that's easy because the children really don't have defenses, and they don't say, "Well, that's BS. I don't believe that." Mm-hmm. They absorb culture. Children do that,
especially from adults who are authority figures.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another part of that is how long does that infection last with a person? The longevity of it. How long does it stay around? Is it knocked out by other ideas and things? And Christianity is very good at doing that by saying, Christianity is the explanation for the universe, why you exist, that there's a God and there's an afterlife, and these sorts of things are very sort of seductive things, and they help. All of these ideas work together to help maintain its infection in a human.
Right. By the way, we do have callers on the line, but we want you guys to just hold, okay? Because we want to give Don his time to give his presentation, and then we'll open up the lines for your calls. All right? So just hang on, and we appreciate the calls, but please be patient. We'll get to you. All right? Thanks.
Finally, another thing that makes a meme successful is being able to influence the behavior of its host. And it's kind of like if you have a cold, you have a cold virus, and if the cold makes you sneeze, that helps the cold take hold in another host.
Maybe affect more people. Yeah.
Right. And that's part of the reason why we see, colds and flus kind of run away. And in effect, what we have is the cold virus affecting the behavior of its host. It's making the host sneeze. Right, it's making the host have a running nose, so that the virus
making the host miss work, making the host do all sorts of things. Yeah,
well, actually, missing work is
a bad thing.
Yeah. Cold medicines. If you're taking a cold medicine and you've suppressed some of the symptoms, then you're going to potentially infect more people. Anyway, we see that
medicines are a beneficial thing to the cold virus.
In a sense, yeah.
The cold virus wants you to go to work and sneeze your head off.
Exactly.
Right in everybody's coffee.
Right. So by analogy, we see successful memes like Christianity influencing the behavior of the hosts. We see Christians wanting to go and proselytize. They see people wanting to go have more children and make sure that they're raised in Christian families. And so on, and there's a lot of sort of the behavior modification going on, and of course this is effectively a result of the meme wanting to propagate itself. It's an adaptation of the meme to influence the behavior of the host, and you see that with successful memes.
Okay.
So those are I think the kind of the main points we'd like to make about the meme and why it's successful, why Christianity is successful.
Okay. Can you give us we'll go ahead and we'll take our callers in a minute, but feel free, go ahead and maybe just give us tie into a few more specifics, like how it is that Christianity, for example, resists criticism of, like, for example, there are dogmas associated with Christianity that you can look at and you can examine them and you can say, okay, this is clearly untrue and for this reason or that or the other. And yet, people, will maintain the belief system regardless of, if you're able to present them with some sort of disconfirming evidence saying, look, here's a belief you've got, and I can show you that it isn't true. And yet, and yet the person is only too happy to just resist that new information. So how is it that a meme will, manage to condition, the believer, as it were, to just not to be resistant to any sort of, critical examination of itself?
Okay. In memetics, we talk about things that are hooks. They're mechanisms by which memes can influence the behavior or sort of control to a limited extent the behavior of the host. And Christianity has quite a number of them, and that's part of the reason why it's so successful, and part of the reason why reason is somewhat is an ineffective tool against Christianity. And one of the ways to look at this is if you just take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is an idea from psychology that we have needs at various levels. We have a need of physiological needs of being fed and breathing and sleep, those sorts of things, all the way up to self-actualization. You can look at all of these different levels of Maslow's hierarchy and see how Christianity influences it. So, for example, if we take a look at our physiological needs, we have a need to stay alive. That's something that was identified. Well, Christianity gives us an eternal life in heaven, right? We don't necessarily have proof of it, but if you believe that there is an afterlife and you have a soul and such, and that you are effectively your soul, and that lives on in afterlife, you've effectively hooked into our survival instinct. Okay, so if you tell someone that they're no longer going to be a Christian, or that's a bad thing, you effectively have to deal with a person coming to grips with their own mortality. At a this is a very low level sort of thing. This is sort of below our emotional level. This is our instinct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So less nasty hooks, if you will, are things like we have Christians, born again Christians. They often have this sense of overwhelming joy and love and feeling part of this culture, and that in effect is kind of giving Christians a freedom from pain or freedom from some of the nasty.
It's a feeling of being protected, right?
Yeah.
This notion of your heavenly Father looking out for you, always watching over you.
Right.
It's this need for, like, people, I guess, don't want to cut the umbilical. So the idea that you still have a parent all through your life who will take care of you, even after your own parents have died.
And even even at an individual level, we have kind of almost a drug-like high created through this feeling of being born again and such. And
as you see, like if you see some of these televised revival meetings where, some of the people in the crowd are just in the throes of ecstasy. They're just really. I mean, it's really, really affected them at a very core level.
Right. And from a skeptic's point of view, you wonder what's going on. But I believe that effect is real in that person, and they really are feeling very high in a sense.
Yeah.
And how can you argue with that with reason, right? Yeah. Reason's an ineffective tool against that.
Sure.
So we got to figure out a way how to have those kind of things at the bagel shop then.
Right.
There's a God. Okay. What might be a couple more?
Those are sort of the more insidious ones. I think, as you go up the hierarchy of needs, we have a notion of feeling safe in our world. We have a notion of Christianity creating a safe society. You buy into this notion that if you believe in God and everybody else does, we have a moral society.
But then you run into cognitive dissonance when you come across a situation like the 9/11 terror attacks, which, and you
upended that whole notion, right?
I know. And you find, and it was amazing how after 9/11 you heard just believers scrambling for whatever way to fit that into the belief system they've already got in a way that would still allow God to exist for them, God, their protective father, to exist for them, and yet reconcile it with this horrible, terrible tragedy, which, by the way, was put together and executed by a bunch of guys who have their own idea of a heavenly father and have their own God belief, and were saying prayers all the while they were hijacking those planes. This weird sort of cognitive dissonance really becomes a problem at that point. And I guess when you see Christians coming up with these, crazy ideas, like I would read on the bulletin boards and in some Christian, newsletters and things where, like this one woman was talking about how she was reduced to describing to her child how, God was holding up the buildings, going, go on there. That's why more people didn't die and people were able to get out, because God was like, oh, hurry, I can't hold it up much longer. Like an all-powerful universe-creating deity would be struggling to hold up two skyscrapers. It's just complete nonsense when you think of it with anything resembling reason.
Right.
And yet it is it is the meme going into, beep, beep, battle stations. We got to, really.
Absolutely. How do you make sense of it? And I think one of the big after effects that we saw is people embracing religion. The message was we didn't pray enough. We aren't close enough to God.
Falwell. Yeah.
Right.
America's not Christian enough. This is God lifting His shield of protection over us.
That's right.
Yeah.
But holding up the buildings.
Yeah. And so now you have the angry, the punishing parent. So the protective parent is also a punishing parent when he feels like it.
Right.
And so, wow. That's scary. That's that's a very controlling mechanism, I can see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've just touched on a few of them. There's quite a few more.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're about halfway through the show now, just about. So it's really a lot of interesting food for thought, and I'm sure that our callers now will probably have some questions for you.
Before you jump into that, let me give a little plug. A lot of the ideas that are in this talk and in this presentation are from my website, which is www.christianitymeme.org.
Okay, yeah.
That's MEME is how it's spelled.
We've had that on. There we go. We got a title right there.
Oh, good deal.
So we'll just go ahead and leave that up while people talk to you.
Thank you.
And call us up. And we're going to start. I believe John has been waiting the longest. He's on line 1. So, hey, you're on the air.
Guys, this is God. Stop playing with yourselves.
Okay. No thanks, because we know you like to watch. All right.
Next.
Thomas is on line 2.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
All right, what can we do for you?
Just wanted to comment on the is it Brian?
I'm Don.
Don,
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I believe that your hypothesis or whatever that you bring to the table just basically explains the complete and total religion plays in every aspect of life.
Yeah, I think that that's sort of a simplified way of looking at it, but it's instructive and useful to look at the mechanism. And I think that that's the value of these ideas is that it gives us an insight into what's really going on and why it works and why it's so powerful.
Yeah, it does explain that. I think it's very useful. I was wondering what you guys thought about the quote-unquote roadmap to peace in the Israel-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we probably each have our own opinions on it today, but that's not really what we're discussing today. I think it's probably every bit as likely to work as every single past peace effort has been. But, it remains to be seen. We can't make predictions about the future, that's for sure. So, they'll give it a shot and it'll either work or it won't. And again, right there, I think memetics can play into that because you are talking about age-old religious conflicts, the Jews versus the Muslims, that are going to be brought to bear there. And I think that alone is the thing that makes that area of the world so volatile. Just as you have a situation in Northern Ireland with, the Catholics versus the Protestants who have to have 9-foot-high walls separating their neighborhoods because if they didn't have those, they'd kill each other. And it's all about these religious conflicts where, one group is saying to the other, you're not believing the right way. So, yeah, I think that's going to be it's going to be hairy because again, when you've got when age-old religious conflicts are in the mix, it's not the sort of thing that a simple peace treaty saying, okay, you guys get this 100 acres and you guys get that 100 acres and then you guys get this 100 acres. It's not the kind of thing you can resolve that way.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you can look at religious wars as from a mimetic standpoint, and in effect, this cultural war, if you want to take it that way, is going on in the United States between the sort of religious faction, the fundamentalists, against the sort of everybody else. But if you take a look at religious wars, you can see that a meme is benefiting by killing off people who believe the opposite, right? Death to the infidels. You're suppressing them, but a meme also benefits by martyrs. So,
oh yeah, very much so.
So
Columbine, perfect case.
Very good example.
Yeah, of a bit of programming that was introduced, entirely untrue. The story's been completely discredited, and it amazes me how. I looked at it at the time, and I still do look at it at the time. But when you look at it through the filter of memetics, it starts to make a little more sense. I was always really outraged by the way this whole Cassie Bernal story of the girl who supposedly, one of the Columbine shooters, asked her if she believed in God, and she whimpered, "Yes, I do," and then he blew her head clean off, which is not how it happened, right? I mean, there's an actual 9/11 recording of that whole incident going on. And it's not what he said to her at all. That whole, it was actually another incident that got sort of conflated into the one. But what happened was this myth took hold, and it just spread like wildfire, and it turned her into a martyr, a book written by her own mother. And at the time, I was looking at it sort of from my cold, distant reason perspective, going, "This is really sickening. Here is Christianity, or at least at least this group of fundamentalists, okay, exploiting, as I saw it." They're exploiting this girl's murder in order to win new converts. Yeah. And it struck me as being this horribly selfish and cold-blooded, very cynical way of saying, look, this is why, everybody needs to become Christian now because look at this bull, but now memetics, if you look at it, looking at the way that works through a memetic standpoint, you could say, no, the mother and the people who put that book out and the people who spread the word didn't see it as being, here's a great opportunity to cash in or do whatever we need to do. This is like the meme takes control, the Christianity meme takes control and says they really, really believed, in this story of her martyrdom and of her, professing her love for God at the moment of death. And this was their way of communicating, this is how powerful Jesus is, and my daughter's up there now with him, and it's all true,
right.
and
gave purpose to her life, and the whole bit.
Yeah, so that was like the best thing, one of the best things for the Christianity memes, and this, I guess this is why when we on the show attack that, saying, "Oh, this is exploitive," and da, and Christians just look at you blankly, like they just don't get how you can think of it that way.
Yeah.
And
they don't look at them.
And this really emphasizes the point that the meme's agenda is very different than humans' agenda, right?
Yeah.
It wants to exploit us, and it will do so.
Yeah. So it is exploitive, but it's just not seen that way by the person who's already embraced it and become all part of it. So that's cool. Okay, anything else?
I thank you very much. I think you have an excellent guest on.
Well, thanks very much. We appreciate you watching.
Watching the rest of the show.
All right,
Thanks.
we appreciate you watching.
Bye.
You take care. All right. You can call her Thomas. And Kent is on line 3, and then we'll just stand. The phone lines are still up at 477-2288 is that number to call. Hey, you're on TV.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
How are you?
This is some interesting intellectual discourse here. It seems like you have opposition with the God as you perceive it being defined by organized religion. Is that true?
Well, I think that gods are first and foremost defined by the people who believe in them. So, I mean, if we as atheists are going to critique a concept of God, we can't do that until the theist presents us with what his idea of God is and why he thinks we should believe it.
Okay, if you get into a situation of dialectical reasoning where you have a thesis and then an antithesis and then a synthesis, right, which is kind of what you're saying there, by believing in atheism, is that not a thesis in itself?
Well, atheism is not a thing you believe in. Atheism is the lack of belief in any gods. It's referring to a person who doesn't believe in God is an atheist. Atheism is not a thing to believe in.
But when you're believing in nothing, that's still a belief.
Atheism isn't a belief in nothing. A belief in nothing is called nihilism. Okay, atheism is the lack of belief in gods, and that's all it is.
The lack of belief in gods as you know them to be defined conceptually.
Well, what other way should I know them to be defined?
Well, you can define gods by not using the intellect, by simply using intuitive reasoning, or what we call Numina.
Okay, and why should I use that?
Well, because there's nothing to be gained by not doing that.
Well, but what is to be gained by? You're essentially saying do not view gods as a concept. Do not conceptualize gods using your reason. Use your intuition. And I would say, what is the cognitive value in doing that?
Well, the cognitive value of it, in one example, is your manifestation of your ability to espouse these views. I mean, where does this come from?
Okay, where does what come from?
If you trace this energy, this life force, back to its very essence, it transcends the intellectual realm.
Okay, well, life is not a force.
Yeah, life is chemistry.
Yeah, life is just a process that matter and energy goes through for a while that has meaning for us. It's not, life isn't like an externalized force.
Well, that's a clever definition of it conceptually, but if you take it back to the source of that energy, that biochemical reaction or whatever it is that set all that in motion, why couldn't that be God?
Well, first off, what is the source? What is the source that you're telling us about? What is it?
Well, you don't seem to like the word source.
Well, I'm trying to get you to define your terminology. Okay, you're saying take life back to its original source, and I want to know what that is.
Well, it transcends intellect. This is the problem.
Okay, well then, if it transcends intellect, how do you understand it? I mean, how do we articulate it? How do we discuss it?
This is the problem with any of these belief systems, and which your guest there very convincingly refers to as viruses. So, in that sense, a system of psychology, a system of no belief, a system of engineering, whatever. These are all viruses that people choose to believe for whatever reason. It could also be their culture or what contributes to their culture, but these are basically intellectual exercises.
Sure.
Okay, if you say that life exists because of chance, or whatever created your hand or your arm or your ability to see, whatever that is, why don't we do? Is there something that you could put a concept on that you think is responsible for us being here today?
Okay, well, first off, I would have to come up with a reason why that was necessary. Okay, let's say if a cause for my life, if that was a necessary question to understand how it is, that I'm alive at all, or why anything is here.
I think what you might be getting at is the beginning of life at all. What caused that? Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you're going for?
No, because your argument or your point of view that you espouse so eloquently is basically intellectual in nature. So I want to see if you can come up with an intellectual concept that explains why all this is going on, why it's necessary for you to be there having your viewpoint and other people having their viewpoint.
So why is there something rather than nothing? Why does anything exist? Is what you're getting at?
Well, I want you to give a concept for what it all is.
Okay. I mean, what again specifically? Are you asking us why there is stuff, like why there's a universe, or are you asking us to come up with a concept of what existence is?
Let's see if intellectually.
Well, I'm just trying to pin down what you're asking us. That's all.
Let me try to explain it this way.
Okay.
It would be the presence of the absence of any conceptual presence.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
It would be the presence of the absence of any conceptual presence.
The presence of the absence of any. That doesn't even make sense.
Yes, it does. Think about it. The presence of the absence of any conceptual presence.
Well, why don't you just call it? Well, let's cut out all the.
Sounds like Buddhism.
Yeah. Let's leave the jargon out.
Yeah. Let's pin it down to like intelligible English. How about the absence of any conceptual presence? Because you can't have a presence of an absence.
Sure, you can.
That's self-contradictory.
No, that defines it.
The presence of an
it's sort of like this. I can simplify the whole thing in one sentence.
Please do.
Okay, like people believe in God, people believe in life, people believe in no God, whatever it is that created all the eloquent balance of the planets, of the atoms in my hand, whatever that is, I didn't do it. It's much greater than me. It's much greater than my comprehension. Mm-hmm. So whatever did that, you can call it a force, you can call it nothing, you can call it something, you can call it beyond concepts or whatever that is, if you accept that as being God, then that would encompass the belief in no God. So by believing in no God, you're actually believing in God.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
That's interesting.
What it sounds like you're doing, essentially, is redefining God. God is not this big invisible man in the sky.
That's right.
But instead, he is the nuclear forces and how chemistry reacts.
He's the purpose of the
universe.
Yeah.
Well, we already have chemistry.
Yeah.
We don't need to say, well, we don't need chemistry anymore because now we have God, which does the same thing. We already have things that do these, we already have, strong and weak nuclear forces. We already have chemistry. We already have, electromagnetic fields. We don't need to, lump all this stuff together and just give it a new name of God.
Yeah, and I would further ask.
We get nothing out of that.
Yeah, and I would further ask, and then I'll let Don dig into this, because what is the point of that exercise? I mean, if essentially what you're saying is just come up in your mind with whatever conceptualize in your mind whatever it is you think the universe is, whatever you think is responsible for reality as we know it existing at all, and just decide to call that God. Then if that's all God is, if God is just the word that people attach to whatever sort of concept that they come up with, why is it even useful anymore? I mean, the term God itself seems to me to be stripped of any meaning. You've just got God being one thing for guy A, one thing for guy B, and one thing for guy C, which I will agree with you is what a lot of religious people do, and I think that's what renders the religious point of view to not make a whole lot of sense.
You're almost there. You're almost to what I'm saying, but you're still trying to label it. And what I'm saying is it defies labelization. But
then I don't understand how we are supposed to discuss it meaningfully.
Right. That's why you are...
So you admit that the concept of God cannot be discussed in any meaningful way?
Pretty much, yeah. And all these people...
So why bother then? Why let's admit that it's all nonsense and
I'm not
get
saying it's nonsense because that's another concept. But all these religions and everything, that's like the middleman getting in the way. And I understand why you have an objection to that, because you can just deal directly with the source or the God or whatever it is without these middlemen.
How can you deal directly with something that you admit is an unintelligible concept that cannot be discussed in a meaningful way?
It cannot be discussed intellectually, but the intellect is a tool like a wrench or a hammer, and it's a very crude tool.
And what other tool do we have to use? Just our emotions? Are you saying
emotions? Well, since that's another tool, yes, but it's more intellectual reasoning.
What is the valid tool for cognition? I mean, are you suggesting that there is something other than the intellect and reason that is a valid means of cognition? That is
intuition.
Intuition?
Sure.
How does it? Okay, describe what it is and how it works. How does intuition work?
It's something you just know that you cannot describe how you know it.
And this is better at ascertaining facts than reason?
It's better at ascertaining the truth. Now,
wait,
it's an interpretation of the truth.
So if I come home at night, right, and I discover that my front window's busted out, right? Okay. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to use my intuition that maybe somebody broke into my house? I mean, is that a better way?
What you need to do is you need to call a glazer to have the window fixed or fix it yourself. That's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
But how did the window get broken? I mean, how am I supposed to...
That was phenomenal. Okay, that's okay.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand. I mean, you're saying that intuition rather than reason is a better tool for ascertaining the truth.
Here you go. Here you go. I understand where you're coming from.
I'm trying to understand how that is even possible.
What is phenomena? What you're talking about is the realm of phenomena. It's a whole level of stuff, okay? Phenomena is simply appearances in space and time that can be apprehended by the senses.
Okay, look, I'm just trying to get to the most simple and direct way of addressing this, which is how does intuition work better than reason at ascertaining what is true?
Well, let me finish, and I'll tell you. You brought up the example of the broken window, which is phenomena. It's a piece of matter, something that you can feel and see, and you can hear the window crash.
Okay.
If you take the point of view of looking at phenomena, appearances in space and time that can be apprehended by the senses, think of what you know that exists within that realm. It's pretty much everything, except for the intellectual realm, right? Well, the complement in a dynamical, symmetrical universe where you have positive and negative and male and female and up and down, centrifugal and centrifugal force, the complement to phenomena is what's known as Numina. Okay. And the way that you apprehend Numina is through intuition, and that's the source of all truth.
Okay. Well, first off, I'm not sure you've convinced me that Numina is. How will I know that Numina exists? I mean,
how do you know that it's the right thing to do to sit there today and espouse what you're espousing?
Well, how do you know that? I do that through reason. I say this is a good idea. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy coming down and discussing these topics with callers.
You enjoy it
with guests.
That's fine. You enjoy it.
Yeah,
but how do you know it's the right thing to do?
How do I know it's the right thing to do?
Okay.
Well, under what grounds would it be the wrong thing to do?
I don't know. You're doing it because you seem like a nice fellow, and you're probably trying to do the right thing or what you believe is the right thing, right? You're not doing the wrong thing.
Yes, but that's an intellectual judgment that I'm making.
Well, you say you're there because of reason. Is that not intellectual?
Sure it is. But I'm trying to figure out where this thing that you're calling Numina comes into play. And again, and if you're already saying that there is something apart from what you call phenomena, which is, I guess, anything that's in the material world that we can actually experience empirically, right? That you're saying that there is something apart from that called Numina that cannot be experienced intellectually and only through, this intuitive process. But at the same time, you're saying that this intuitive process of looking at Numina, which again, I'm not quite sure you've presented good evidence for, is better at ascertaining the truth than your direct experiences, your intellectual evaluations, and your reason when dealing with the actual real world you're involved in. And I'm trying to get to how that is the case. How is it better to ascertain the truth through intuition than intellect?
Because it doesn't involve the middleman, just like religion is a middleman between you and God.
Okay, so what is your intellect the middleman between? What is reason the middleman between?
It's the middleman between you and Numina. It's like a pyramid.
What is Numina? You have not even demonstrated to me that this is a thing that exists.
Numina is something that you just know without having to be filtered through the mind.
Something I just know?
Something you just know.
Something you just know without having to be filtered through the mind? Where is it filtered through? My pancreas?
No, it's not filtered through anything. It's omnipresent. It's ubiquitous.
Okay, now how do we determine if something is true? If I just intuit something, how do we determine that is true versus, just my mind having a brain fart?
The truth is what works.
Well,
if it works
wait a minute,
in the real world.
But again, I'm still trying to get down to...
But then that goes back to...
we're going to get you in on this.
Actually doing stuff.
Okay.
It goes back to that. I can have any idea I want to, but I have to actually go into the real world and demonstrate that, I could have the intuition that if I drop this pen, it's going to fall through the table. Just
no, that's more or less physics. Listen, have you ever been driving?
I want to. I don't want to move on. I'm not ready to move on to anything new yet. I'm trying to figure out what other than your mind is it that you're supposed to use to know things?
Well, what did you use before you developed a mind?
Well, I've pretty much, now. I'd like to think I've
we're
had.
Talking about single cell organisms.
Yeah, I mean,
what are talking about?
Yeah, every baby born. You have a mind. You learn stuff. You're not born with everything.
The mind is simply composed of concepts and intellect. You knew stuff before you developed a mind, before you started to read and write, before you were educated.
Yes, but again, these are not like feeding at your mother's breast is not this.
That's an instinct.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's not something there that's
intuitively the baby knows that if he cries, the mother will come.
Yes, but that's biological, right?
Yeah, it's biochemical.
This isn't intuition. This is hardwired by our genes.
Yeah. I mean,
these are instincts and such.
Yeah,
instinct is closer to what I'm talking about than intellect.
Okay. Well, anyway, listen.
It's interesting, and you guys and I agree with you in a lot of ways, but I think that there's another step there that if you were to consider, you would be enjoying this, but you'd also realize that there's something else. And
no, I don't, because you haven't defined the something else that I'm supposed to realize.
That's because you want me to define it intellectually, and when I'm telling you it defies intellectual definition.
Then I don't. Then if it defies intellectual discussion, I don't see that it's anything real.
Well, it is real.
Okay. Again, how do you demonstrate that to me? Okay, you either need to demonstrate to me that it's real. You cannot simply declaim, Martin, there is this other realm that you're not tied into right now, but it's real.
Have you ever been sitting in a room and all of a sudden you look around and somebody's looking at you, and no one said anything? That you just knew that fellow was looking at you, and you turned around and looked at him.
Well, I've never had that precise experience. No.
Okay, have you ever been driving along in the car and then all of a sudden, for some reason, you take a turn, you change what you're going to do, and it turns out to be the right thing?
Well, but again, I mean,
the brain does weird things.
Well, but that doesn't prove anything. I mean, if I'm driving and I have plans and then I change those plans and the other plans turn out to work out well, it doesn't mean that my original plans would have turned out bad had I gone through with them. It's just that I decided to do something else that was more convenient to me at the time.
Does anything ever inspire you?
Inspire me in what way? All kinds of things can inspire me.
What inspires you?
Inspires me? Mm-hmm. Oh, just all sorts of stuff. Like daily life. But again, what is the point you're trying to make? I'm still trying to get a clear definition from you of what this other sort of thing is that you're saying that I am aware of, this other realm.
Well, I'm understanding now where you're coming from, because an atheist then, his whole job then is to pose an antithesis to somebody else's thesis. So by me not proposing a thesis that you can intellectually apprehend,
what am I supposed to do?
You're out of work.
What am I supposed to do? Just accept every declamation you make and not expect you to back it up?
Well, I am backing it up.
But you're not backing it up in an intelligible way.
Yes, I am.
Okay, because you are saying, when I ask you for proof of these things, you are saying it cannot be discussed intellectually. At which point I decide, then who cares?
So what you're saying is that there's nothing beyond the intellect, and that's your God. Your God is the intellect.
Okay, well, I don't call it that.
If you want to call a process in God, then it's kind of pointless, but okay.
Yeah, I don't call my intellect a God, but I appreciate the compliment.
What I'm saying is I appreciate you guys and the Christians and all the virus carriers and all this stuff. It's all unnecessary when it comes to perceiving the truth. Yeah. They're all single points of view into things.
Okay. Right. Well, we have a bunch of other callers now who are lined up.
Anyway, good luck. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
But again, see, it's, there are a lot of, explain this please to me. There are a lot of folks out there who have this idea that isn't really, and I think, mimetically, this whole idea that there's got to be something more. And yet, this whole idea that it can't be articulated or there's no way to, this whole idea that it's impervious to reason. Okay, that there is another tool other than reason that human beings use to garner their ideas, to attain cognition, to learn meaningful things about the world around you. And yet, how is there? I mean, can you analyze more or less the discussion we've just had from a mimetic standpoint?
Well, I can try. I won't say I'll definitely hit it on the head, but I think there is, in a sense, a meme of being able to intuit things or being able to have a core understanding of something without sensing it, without reasoning about it, that sort of thing. And I think that idea in itself is a meme. And we as humans, we have some built-in capabilities of recognizing patterns, whether or not they're really there. We see patterns in between things. We invent stories for why things go on. This is a device out of cognitive psychology called the confabulator, and it plays into this notion that that we are somehow getting some base understanding of the world or the universe through other means. Just the fact that we're interpreting coincidences as something meaningful when
it's called apophenia, I think, is one term for seeing patterns, meaningful connections in situations that are not necessarily directly linked or demonstrably linked. Again, Kent, we loved your call. That was very interesting. But again, I was just. It is quite true. I think that. Here we have Kent and myself. I think we were arguing most of the time at cross purposes. Okay, he has accepted this idea that what you can describe as intuition, where okay, you may be sitting in a room and get this tingling in the back of your head saying, "I feel like I'm being stared at," and then you look around and there's your cat or something. But again, is that just an odd event that occurs that we try to attach a pattern to, or is there really any direct evidence that this is us being tied into some more numinous or supernatural kind of our preternatural plane of existence that's above and beyond our mundane lives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is what, I guess a lot of the religious or the paranormal or some people who are into esoteric philosophies, that's how they would have you look at it. And all I was trying to do was, again, pin Kent down on concretes. And probably I was making the mistake there because he's trying to argue something and it admits that it can't be argued concretely. And I don't really see the world in any other way than that, because I do see what he considers, it's intuition and you're tied into the Numina. And I'm like, no, that's just you.
Well, it seems like the part of the problem there was that whenever you intuit something, I feel that somebody's watching me. I can empirically test that in the world. I can look around and find out, is anybody watching me? Yes or no? Now, how did I get that knowledge? There's no way to test that.
Yeah.
From what he's saying, there is no way to test that and verify it. It just kind of poof, there it is. And if you can't test something, well then, brain fart, intuition, God, what's the difference?
Right, and it plays into this notion of the God idea of, God is sort of communicating to you some sort of by some sort of mechanism. So what we have is a phenomena that exists in our brains because of who knows what, brain farts, whatever. We're not computers. We're not deterministic computers. We have a lot of stuff going on, and we have this God meme, and it's in effect hijacking this whole idea in the sense that it provides a convenient explanation for what's going on. There, you are connected to the supernatural world. It's giving you messages. If you happen to make some sort of random choice and it later turns out to be great, then God was helping you. That sort of thing. The whole idea of miracles, I think, is a very related concept here.
Sure, but I think getting back to the basis of what Kent was trying to argue was, okay, there are things that go on in your life that you don't really have a ready explanation for, that seem unusual, that seem strangely coincidental, that seem like they don't have a direct, that just came out of nowhere, and you don't know how or why. Or it's like, you're flipping through your wallet and you find a friend's phone number, and then at that instant, that friend happens to call you and say, "Hey, how you doing? I was thinking about you," or whatever. And because life is filled with these little inexplicable odd occurrences every now and again, we seek to understand them.
Right.
Since there's no obvious, empirical or rational way to explain them right away, and because to many people the concept of the coincidence just seems somehow unrewarding, or just, you're just doing pattern recognition or what have you.
Right.
They'd rather say, no, there's got to be something deeper and more meaningful to it, because we don't want anything in life to not mean something. Really anything in our, even the smallest event, right? Isn't that true? People don't want anything in their lives to be a random.
That's part of our human
thing.
nature, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So even like so I've heard friends of mine say something like if they find a $10 bill on the sidewalk, they're like, "Oh, the universe was looking out for me today," or whatever.
Right.
It's this even the most mundane thing. We really don't want.
The universe was looking out for you, and all it could produce was a $10
bill. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Okay. Who's next? John on one. Hi, you're on the air. Thanks.
Hi. I got to say, I was impressed with the way that you talked to the last person, but I mean, it seems like most of your arguments, rather than being based on reason, are based on emotion. You know, I mean, it seems like they're, can you believe this Christian said this, or can you believe this person said that? I mean,
did I say that today?
Well, I'll give you an example. For instance, you talked about, this Christian group or that. I mean, I don't know, it seems like where your argument is flawed in that is that, I mean, I don't agree with every Christian that ever was either. I mean, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, would you agree with Occam's razor as a whole? The simplest explanation is usually the correct one.
Well, generally speaking, yeah, that's a good principle to follow, and it usually tends to be the case. I mean, if you have multiple explanations for a possible phenomena, usually the most prosaic of all those explanations will turn out to be the right one.
Good. What I'm getting at here is, according to our understanding, you can kind of observe how things kind of work together in nature. It's kind of like, well, it just does, like gravity, for example,
We're all made of atoms, so we're all very much connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
we're all made of atoms, we're all made of molecules.
We're all
subject
to the forces.
It seems to look like, I'm sure you would agree that in some ways it seems to look like it is from a creator.
Well, no, obviously we wouldn't agree with that, otherwise we wouldn't be atheists, right?
No, I'm saying,
I agree. It has that.
I agree that people could look at a certain thing, as Don said, and say it looks like that. I do agree that some people can decide that it looks that way to them. Yes.
Right. Well, I don't know.
Are you saying that is the best explanation? Mm-hmm. Since it's the easiest, therefore it's the best?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just seems like, it's,
But it begs the question of who created the creator, So it doesn't hold up, unfortunately, because it doesn't end up with something grounded.
Well,
see, because, introducing the concept of the creator actually
just moves the problem.
Yeah, and it brings up every bit as many questions as you were just trying to answer. You're essentially trying to solve a mystery with another mystery, because the minute you propose a creator, then all sorts of questions about that creator and the nature of that creator then have to be addressed. And as Don said, it doesn't really ground the problem for you and get you to a solution. It just pushes the mystery back one notch, as it were.
Well, it seems like, every major, scientist that's made any major discovery has acknowledged the existence of a God.
Come on, don't give me that. Either give me names, all right, because we can tell you right now, that of a great many scientists who are not theistic.
Right.
So, don't just toss this thing out and say a great many scientists. Give me some, but besides.
Like, for example, Aristotle, Galileo.
Okay, the guys, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Give me some people right now. Give me some Nobel laureate. But again, but that's beside the point,
what's
right?
His name? Stephen Hawking, for example.
Who is not theistic, as I understand.
Huh?
Right?
I don't know.
No, he's Anglican.
You could have been raised in the Anglican Church. That doesn't necessarily pertain to whatever he may believe now. But again, that's beside the point, right? Because then what you're trying to do is make the argument from authority. And that doesn't really, that's a fallacy. That doesn't really prove anything, okay? You could have a scientist who believes in leprechauns, but, if his field is geology, that doesn't really...
they've examined it logically, and it seems like, they would have reasoned that out,
Well, no, the possession of a very nice, expensive degree and, having a career as a scientist, you are still a human being. You're still fallible. You're capable of irrational ideas and falling prey to, as you've said, emotional arguments. So again, it doesn't make you immune from mistakes. Being a scientist doesn't make that person omniscient.
Of course not, but it seems like, it seems like if you have one that, has really no reason to, believe in any sort of, faith or not, and yet they acknowledge that there's
It's immaterial. It's immaterial. I mean, whatever reason a person has to decide that they believe in a God, right? That's fine. I mean, if that person is a scientist, right, and if they can come up with a good proof, a good test for the existence of some sort of divine being, okay, that holds up to the rigors of scientific experimentation, that's when it can be taken seriously in that way as a notion. Okay, just saying so-and-so PhD, professor of biochemistry,
that's not what I meant.
believes...
Here's another point I'd like to make is you'd have a much more compelling argument if you had a lot of PhDs and scientists come to Christianity as adults and adopt it as adults with their reasoned mind. What I'm willing to bet is that pretty much all of those people, maybe all of them, I don't know, were effectively indoctrinated in Christianity as children before they developed their mind.
Yeah,
so
like
you can't...
Stephen Hawking being Anglican, raised in the Anglican Church.
Absolutely.
Right. And what most people are raised in a church. That's just how our culture is, right?
So if you want to make a compelling argument, what you'd want to be able to say is, oh, look at all these scientists who, as adults, came to Christianity. But
I'm not talking about Christianity yet. I'm just
or any sort of theism, any sort of theism, or any sort of supernaturalism, or a spiritual belief.
But I'm willing to bet that those people are very rare.
Yeah. So again, otherwise, if they came to that belief through their studies. Professionally through their field, then I would want to see them publish a peer-reviewed paper on the existence of God, and then check it out, and then we can all go home tomorrow and not have to do the show anymore.
I guess part of the reason why I was saying that it seems to look like Creator is because we have certain rules of logic, in nature. I mean, we've got math, for example, that is a logical system,
I understand what you're saying. We have we live in a physical world, and we have very sort of common sense notions of how it works, right? If I push this over to the side, it's going to move and maybe make a little noise as it moves, that sort of thing. But the scale of the world that we live in, this sort of macroscopic scale, we develop certain intuitions. But let's take a look at, say, quantum mechanics, and when you start talking about things at a very small scale, all of our common sense notions go out the window. Okay, that doesn't mean that, and it's just because we are adapted as beings to live very well in this world. So in a sense, we have a very good understanding of that. If we didn't, we wouldn't survive. So when you take a look at very small things, very large things, or that sort of thing, then our common sense intuitions don't necessarily hold. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So if you take a look at the universe and its Big Bang and all this matter and energy all in one place, which is how we assume that it happens, our common sense notions of that may or may not apply there. So
what I'm saying is, our idea of math, is pretty much, universal. I mean, anywhere you go, 2 + 2 = 4. If we can explain, or if we can come up with a formula for gravity and for all these things in nature, it seems like, it's logical on its own,
Once the more naturalistic explanations we are able to come up with for why things work the way they work, the more and more supernatural explanations get pushed to the back burner. They're no longer necessary, as we have a better natural understanding of how the natural world works. But listen, John, we appreciate your caller, and we got 2 more guys on the phone that we wanted to get to before we're off the air. So thanks for your questions, man, and thanks for watching. All right?
Okay,
take care.
Bye.
So, Ian is on too, and again, we're sorry to keep folks waiting. Hi, thanks for waiting.
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing fine.
Hey, I wanted to go back to the word Numina.
Yes, please.
That is actually a ghost. Numina is a spirit or divine power that presides over a thing or a place.
Yeah, numinous. Okay. And numinous is the adjective, I believe. So, yeah. So essentially what Kent was trying to do was get us to accept this whole idea of a spiritual, supernatural realm without actually using those terms. which we would immediately lash out at, and then
of course, God's the whole reason behind all that. So
and then try to explain how it is that there has got to be some other realm that you cannot use your intellect to describe, and ultimately it's the same argument that you get from Christians who when you want to ask them really detailed questions about the nature of God, they'll say, oh, well, God's ways are mysterious to man, and you have to take this part on faith because your reason is not adequate, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
I also wanted to say that I think that intuition is part of your intellect. It's all the same brain is processing all this.
Yeah. It's just using it a different way, right? Would that be a fair summation?
Well, certainly our brains, have some logical processes in them. They have some illogical and some things that occur, cosmic rays or whatever, that might influence things. So there's a whole jumble of things in there, and if we try very hard, we can get some reason out, and we think that's a good thing.
Okay.
So not necessarily always reasonable.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thanks a lot for your call, Don. We're in the last 5 minutes, Ian, so we're going to try to get to our next guy. But thanks for pointing that out to us, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Take care. All right. And Don is on line 3. He's been holding very patiently. Hey, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, hello, Martin.
Hi. Well, how are you?
Oh, hey.
I'm doing fine.
Okay. What you got for us?
Look, I've got 2 questions. Number one is, do you describe atheists or define atheists as a person who believes in the non-existence of a God?
Okay. And your next question?
And number one, what about the realm of physics? Does it fit into your idea of a science?
Physics?
Physics, yes.
Physics, okay. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll let everybody answer those in turn. Thanks. Okay. We're running out of time. We got like 4 minutes. Anyway, and we've talked to Don before. So, of course, physics is a science, and that's the answer to the second question. And the answer to the first question would be
no.
What? Well, there are two ways in which one can approach atheism. There's what's called strong atheism or weak atheism, or you could also call it hard atheism or soft atheism. And hard atheism would be somebody taking a direct positive approach to like an outward denial of even the concept of God and making that a positive claim. I don't do that, and we generally speaking don't try to do that on the show because in our view, the soft atheist or the weak atheist position is sufficient to defend atheism. Yeah. And remember, it is up to the believer to explain to us and define to us what his concept of his God is in the first place. Okay, and then we can only respond to that. Okay, so when a believer tells us, why don't you believe in God? We first say, well, tell us about your God. Why should I believe in your God? And if his answer fails to satisfy us, we'll say, I'm sorry, I just don't believe in your God. Your answer didn't satisfy me. And to me, I think that is a sufficient position for atheists to take to defend not believing. It's just like anything else. If someone tries to tell you they have elves in their yard, or they want to tell you that the UFOs landed and they were kidnapped, or they want to tell you about the Loch Ness Monster, if they cannot back up their claim with sufficient evidence, then you've got no reason to believe them. Like anything else. And I think that's perfectly adequate. That's all that's needed for atheism. It is not necessary for an atheist to take
the strong atheist approach,
the strong atheist position saying, I deny that there's no God, I can, it's impossible, nothing that could possibly be called a God could possibly exist, blah, blah, blah. I think that's
that's a claim in itself that needs to be verified.
Exactly.
Then
cannot be logically defended.
Right. So that is just not really what atheism. There are probably atheists out there. There probably are atheists out there who do that. I don't think it's necessary.
We know of a couple.
Yeah, we know. I don't think it's necessary. And again, what you're doing is you are putting yourself in the position of having to.
You have to have an assertion.
You've made an assertion that you then have to back up. Yeah. And which could be immediately refuted because all you'd have to do is meet a guy who was a sun worshiper saying, that's my God, I worship that, that's my God. And you can say, but that's not a God, that's a big ball of hydrogen gas that's on fire. I know,
right.
But to me, it's my God. Okay, well, there you go. A thing that what he's decided to call a God is a thing that you say, oh yeah, I'm not going to worship it, but
which raises the point that God is often ill-defined.
Yeah.
He had asked if atheism is the belief in the non-existence of God, and no, it's not. It's just a lack of a belief in a God.
Yeah.
So
it can be the belief in the non-existence of God, but that's an atheist biting off way more than he needs to chew.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's just not necessary to defend atheism. And we got no more callers on the line, so I think that's going to wrap it up. I'm sorry, Don, we went on with Kent for a long time, and if you were chomping at the bit to get in there, I was sort of like,
no, that's fine.
But in our last minute or 30 seconds or so, what can you wrap up with? We'd like to encourage people to visit ChristianityMeme.org, and they can learn more about what memetics are and how Christianity functions as a meme and defends and protects itself from disconfirming views, from contradictory and conflicting and critical views. And then they can write you from that website, too, if they want to dialogue with you and all the rest of that.
Absolutely.
And if you want to dialogue with us online on the Internet, tv@atheist-community.org is the address to send us all your love letters and stuff. So please do. And as I've said, we try to read the most interesting letters on the air every week if we get a good one to read. And, of course, everything gets answered anyway and put up on the website, too, if it's really cool. So thanks a lot. Again, Don, thank you very much for
Thank you for having me.
Presentation, and we would like to have you back again sometime too.
I'd like that.
And boy, what else, Ashley?
Nothing.
Take us out. In the last 20 seconds.
Take us out. Physics. Physics is an empirical science. We can actually test it, see it in the real world, do experiment after experiment after experiment after experiment that verifies it and proves that it's real. And it is a science. Yes, it is growing and changing.
But we don't know everything.
That was his second question.
Bye-bye.